I think there's a real sense that because the numbers are looking good on vaccinations, on infection rates, that the R number is looking pretty healthy, even that there's a bit of spring in the air, that as a result people are starting to think we're home and dry on this. Well, today, very much a warning that people must not take for granted the roadmap that's been laid out by the Prime Minister.
No earlier than the 12th of April, shops will return and reopen. No earlier than May the 17th, we'll go to step 3 and open all our hospitality sector to service indoors. From the 21st of June, we will go to step 4 and say goodbye to most remaining restrictions.
And the first steps on that roadmap were taken this week in England with the return to schools. But today, a sobering warning to a parliamentary committee from the government's top scientists. Opening up will mean another peak.
All the modelling suggests there is going to be a further surge, and that will find the people who either have not been vaccinated or where the vaccine's not worked. And some of them will end up in hospital, and sadly some of them will go on to die. And that's just the reality of where we are with the current vaccination.
And the government's modelling suggests 30,000 more deaths is a realistic assessment from such a surge. And if you thought the pace of the vaccine rollout might mean we could even speed things up, today's advice, definitely not. The 5-week gap between each relaxation should not be shortened.
The perspective of our advice was to make sure that you really have enough time to measure what has happened in response to each change, and then decide whether you've got room to make the next change, either on the date that's been announced or delaying if you have to.
Under the roadmap, we are still on course to be here by the end of June. But the message from the scientists today, we can't rush to get there, and it will come at a price.
Very important message as well, Andy. It seems to be don't let the falling numbers lure us into a lack of caution.
That's right, and that 30,000 deaths, for instance, is not a worst-case scenario. That is basically what the government's modellers are expecting if the release from lockdown goes broadly to plan. And Chris Whitty also said, for instance, look, the world is not full of leaders out there saying, oh, I'm sorry we didn't go faster on easing lockdown. Quite the opposite. Now, there will be people around the country, there'll be Conservative MPs, for instance, who will be unhappy with what they've heard from these two men today, Dr. Gloom and Dr. Doom, as some have dubbed them. But there's no doubt that right now the Prime Minister is absolutely on side with his chief scientific advisors. He said in the press conference yesterday that he believes the country would be ready to trade, in his words, some haste for some certainty about coming out of lockdown.